I think that reflection for me is about that dialogue. It brings us into contact with the importance of our environment and the effect that it has on our being, on our biological being. When I was in art school, my work tended to be kind of quite subjective. I was interested in Dada and surrealism, and my paintings were really about what I dreamt the night before. It was really about my internal life. And I remember in 1974 going to New York City. I went to meet Salvador Dali, but I also saw the Jim Nutt retrospective at the Whitney. And I was really moved by Jim Nutt's work, and I ended up changing schools, going from the Maryland Institute College of Art to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. But Jim Nutt was on a sabbatical. And I met Ed Paschke, who is another Chicago Imagist artist. I befriended Ed and became his studio assistant, and Ed was really a mentor to me. I had him as a teacher at the Art Institute of Chicago, but also on the weekends as an assistant. He really kind of taught me the kind of political side of being an artist, you know, trying to make your work and to be at the service of your work. Jim Nutt was on a sabbatical, so I had Jim Nutt only one day as a visiting teacher when I was in Chicago. But I always have enjoyed how he's incorporated art history into his work. You can look at Jim's work and, you know, you're looking at a painting of a woman's head, but if you look at it, it could be making, you know, references in some manner to Pergamon, or just by looking at maybe the dress that a woman's wearing, it could be figures of Pergamon, or you could be looking at a painting and it could be referencing kind of Giotto or the time of Giotto. And so I've always loved that about Jim's work. I remember after finishing art school, I was living in Chicago, and a DJ came on the radio, and he played the Horses album by Patti Smith. And he said at that time there was this new wave movement going on in New York. He played the Horses album, and I thought the music was fantastic. And he was talking about this young scene of poets and artists, musicians. And the next morning I woke up and I hitchhiked to New York. And I really have been there ever since then. This was at the very end of '76. But I had my own apartment and moved in the, like, January 1st, '77. When I moved to New York, first of all, I was able to be part of my own generation and start talking to artists about, you know, art, what type of art we kind of envisioned that we would have interest in, what we liked, what the ideas were for our own works. And before you know it, we would start to be showing in alternative spaces and in group shows. And so, you know, people within my generation, different artists, Richard Prince or Sidney Sherman, Julian Schnabel, David Solly, you know, whole Laurie Simmons, all these different artists, you know, started to have exhibitions and that we showed, but all of our work, you know, represents not just our own ideas, but the ideas of a generation. If I think of the works that I've made over the years, for me, the first moment when I thought that maybe I could be creating something that hopefully has a sense of value to society would be when I made my first inflatable piece, inflatable rabbit and flower, that I thought that this work could have kind of some significance. And I remember that the level of almost intoxication that I felt from looking at the pink of the rabbit and being reflected into the mirror, and the colors of the flower being reflected into the mirror, and the difference of time, that looking at the object themselves had one aspect of time, but the reflection was just maybe a little slower than the perception of looking at the surface of the inflatable. That I felt kind of, wow, this has some intensity to it. If I think about why I enjoy working with a reflective surface, I believe it has to do with, first of all, my history of my father's furniture store and seeing a lot of mirrors in the store. But it involves the viewer, and it's telling you that this experience is about you. It reflects you. You have a dialogue of both your internal being, feelings and sensations that you have within the density of your biological being, but also the essence of the presentation of the self, the external world. And you have a reflection of yourself and just this dialogue about internal and external. And that's the life experience that we have. John Dewey, the American philosopher, I always love how he speaks about true communication as this effect, and he'll talk about a single cell organism, that it can be affected by its external environment and it changes. But then that single cell organism now has an effect on the environment, and the environment changes from that effect of the organism. And this back and forth, that's the experience of life. And that's the experience that we have as individuals. And I think that reflection, for me, is about that dialogue. It brings us into contact with the importance of our environment and the effect that it has on our being, on our biological being. The gazing balls have a history that begins in the 1500s. And they actually start in Venice, on the island of Murano. And that's where the first gazing bowls are made, and they're used mostly by the aristocracy. And they're placed within people's homes that they could be in a corner, and they would be able to, the butlers would be able to view people in the home if they needed any attention to pay to them. It was a way to see around corners. And gazing balls fall out of fashion, and then in the 19th century, King Ludwig II of Bavaria repopularizes them, and he has gazing balls and he enjoys them. He puts them also outside into the gardens. And so even today in Germany, they're very popular. I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is a very large German population. And I would always enjoy going around in the neighborhood and seeing gazing balls. And, to me, they're a symbol of generosity. I'm really thrilled to have the Borghese Gladiator here at Almin Rex Gallery in Paris. And, at the present time, the Olympics are going to be opening very soon. And to have a work that is kind of sportive in theme. The Borghese Gladiator sometimes is also interpreted as Achilles. And it's Achilles. In one hand, he would have a sword, and in the other, he would have a shield. And but it was in the Borghese collection, and it's become known as the Borghese Gladiator. But most likely, it's Achilles. It's great to celebrate, the human history of motion, of sport, and of the body. And so this is the first gazing bowl sculpture that I've ever had more than one ball in. I would always just work with a blue gazing ball, and so I freed myself from that. I have 11 different balls, all different colors. I have 2 that are kind of my traditional kind of gazing ball blue. But these balls are also made in a different way. Previously, I would just blow or have blown a gazing ball into a mold, and it would be the colored glass. And but now we've blown these that we have clear glass on the outside and the color on the inside, and it gives an added kind of visual saturation to the color. It gives them a greater sense of color and clarity, which I'm very, very happy about. And I think that the multiple colors, especially on the plaster kind of antique piece, it makes reference to, in a reverse way, of the ancient tradition where everything was polychromed. I mean, the world always celebrated color. The idea of a sculpture, an antique, not having any color is really misinformation. The archaeologists and historians always knew that everything was colored. So having the color in the gazing balls is almost, it alludes to that also. I always made all of my artworks by myself, and it wasn't until my Equilibrium series where I started to cast objects in bronze that I took ideas to a foundry and actually started working with people. Because I didn't have my own foundry, automatically there are people there that'll make molds, and they'll cast waxes for you to work on, and eventually they'll put it into like a bronze material. So I started to feel comfortable and trusted working with people. Then with my Equilibrium work, I started to also have people make steel stands for me because I wasn't a welder. And that was how I started to have assistants. And if I would make everything myself, like I used to, like I made all my the new vacuum cleaner cases myself up until around 1984. When I remade some of the cases, I had a company manufacture them under my specifications. But I wouldn't be able to make as many works as I would like to. Maybe I would only make 5 cases a year and maybe only 3 paintings, instead of being able to not only make my vacuum cleaner pieces that I wanted to continue to make, but to be able to make paintings and other sculptures. And it just gives you the ability to realize more work. But I'm responsible to create systems that protects me, that every piece that I make is really exactly what I want, and that I can feel as though every gesture has been made by myself. And if I would not have systems in place that I could feel that, I wouldn't work that way.